Hello folks. A while back I reviewed an Amico TIG 225 welder, and performance wise it was okay, but it had a lot of little issues, and I talked about them quite a bit in the video. In fact, I made multiple videos with that welder. Well, here recently I decided to pick up another one for a comparison that I wanted to do, but I got to looking around and I found that there is actually a newer version available. So the older version, the TIG 165, 185, 205, and also 225, which is what I reviewed last time, they were red with black trim, but there is a newer version, which is this one right here, the TIG 185HF, also available in multiple amperages. But from the pictures, it looked like an updated version with a few more features, so I decided to get that version instead and see if there were any meaningful updates and if they made it any better. And I'm happy to report there are definitely some very good updates, and they've made it quite a bit better. So before I get into the comparison, I just want to take a quick look at this welder and talk about what is better. So first of all, one of the main issues that I had with the first welder was the fact that the gas input fitting on the back of the welder was incorrect. So the included gas hose did not work, and in fact the fitting didn't match anything I could find at my local hardware store, so I had to just use a rubber washer and just kind of make it work good enough. But I'm happy to report that this welder does have the correct gas fitting on the back, so it will work properly with the included gas hose or any standard gas hose that is supplied with the regulators for these type of welders. One big performance related issue that I had with the last welder was that post flow was not adjustable, and it was set very, very short at something like 3.5 seconds. And so what that meant is anytime you were welding at a higher amperage, the post flow would cut out very quickly, and the tungsten would oxidize, the weld would oxidize, and it really just didn't have a long enough post flow. This welder appears to have adjustable post flow. Now I say appears to have because there's an extra knob on the front here in addition to just the amperage adjustment knob, and it's labeled post down. I'm pretty sure that is adjustable post flow, although, like I said, it's labeled post down, not post flow, and the manual does not actually say anything about what that knob does, but I'm pretty sure that's going to be post flow. I'll find out when I do some testing with it, but it's labeled 1 to 10, so if this welder has an adjustable 1 to 10 second post flow, that's a definite improvement over the previous welder. Also, I have just taken this welder apart quickly just to check it out, and the internal build quality is definitely a step above the previous welder. It definitely seems to have a much better and more robust design than the previous one. It is slightly physically larger, but I think that's definitely a good trade-off for just the better build that this thing has inside. The final big improvement is going to be the torch. Now, anybody that watched my previous reviews knows that I didn't have any big love for the torch that came with the last welder, and this one actually is a very similar overall design. So kind of the look of it is the same. It still has the button on the top for turning the arc on and off. But while it may not look like it, just to glance at it right off the bat, this torch is actually far smaller than the torch that came with the last welder. This torch is just a bit thinner. It is far lighter. It is much more slim. It's much easier to hold. It's much easier to get a comfortable grip on it. And another big thing is that while the button on the previous welder was very, very stiff, and it took quite a bit of force to actuate, which meant that, once you get yourself into kind of a tough position, you're trying to hold down that really stiff button while you're welding, as well as, just pushing it in general is going to move the torch around. This one is far easier to press, requires much less effort. So overall, huge improvement on the torch. Once again, once I actually get doing some performance on it, we'll see how it holds up. But just in terms of the design, still not my favorite torch by any means, but far, far better than what came with the old one. Overall, the rest of the accessories are pretty much the same as what came with the last one. The insulation on the cables is definitely the same, so it's going to have a fairly low melting point. So you just have to be kind of careful with that, if this cable gets up against anything hot, hot workpiece or something, you could definitely melt that insulation. But the electrode holder is quite a bit less bulky as well, so it's a little bit easier to use. It has a pretty stiff spring on it, and we'll see how it holds up in use if that pin wants to walk out or not, but it does appear to be held by the insulator here. So, it's hard to say for sure, but just in general, it looks like it'll hold up a little bit better than the last one. The electrode holder, I would have to say, is probably identical in terms of, it's the same part as what came with the last one. It's pretty large. It's got a very stiff spring on it, but I would say this is kind of a worse example than the last one. It is very crooked and just very loose and flimsy. It's, you know, kind of bent already before I even used it. So, you know, not a great work clamp, but, you know, copper jaws, and as long as it doesn't break apart completely, you know, you could make it work. That's what happens when you live along the practice route of an Air National Guard base, is you get fighter jets going over your house every so often when they're running drills. Other than that, very similar to the last machine. It is a dual voltage, can run off 120 or 240 volts. It's a TIG machine with high frequency start. Has just a 2-wire control connector here, so whether you're using a torch switch like what it comes with, or whether you wire up a foot pedal, it's just going to be on and off, not amperage control. You know, same as the last one, but like I said, overall, definitely a much better impression, at least initially, from this welder. As long as it performs as good as the last welder, much less better, I would definitely say this is a recommend over the previous model. In fact, and now that this one exists, I wouldn't even consider the last one. I would say this one all the way every day. So I think that's going to do it for this video. I just wanted a separate video to point out all the improvements that this welder has, even just right out of the box before we talk about performance, over the previous Amico TIG welder that I reviewed. It looks like Amico has really done quite a lot to fix the issues from the previous machine. And the great news is the price doesn't really seem to have changed. I paid about the same for this, actually just a little bit less for this than I did for the TIG 225, because this is a little bit lower amperage version. So anytime you can get that many improvements without an increase in price, that's fantastic. So for anybody looking for one of these Amico welders, this is the one to get, not the older red one. But I will be doing another video to test the performance of this machine, and actually you can see some of the steel that I'm going to be using in the background there. I actually have all the steel set up to do 2 projects, that both of them the same. I'm going to do one of them with this Amico welder, and one of them I'm going to do with a Miller MaxStar 210. So if you're really just interested in a review of this welder, that upcoming video could kind of be seen as a part 2, because that's where I'll be really delving into the performance of this machine. So if you have any questions, or if there's anything specific you'd like me to test out with this welder, go ahead and post them up down below. As always, thank you for watching. Take care.